their side. So, Jay did an interview. It was a little bit like before Rock Nation, but you could get kind of the origin of it, of some advice that he would give for people who are trying to figure out like different ventures and things like that. So let's get into that clip.
My advice is just do things that are true to you. Most things that I'm involved with are extension of being creative. Rockaway is a clothing company. It's part of who you are, and hip hop is your attitude and what you're trying to express, how you dress. I love sports growing up. I grew up in a household where sports was on 24/7. So these are things that are comfortable for me. These are things that I like. So I would just say get involved in things that you love, and also have a standard for yourself and have some sort of integrity.
You see me writing, I went straight right back to it.
Hey, no, you see the numbers though. People, do you see these numbers? All right. So I actually want to start it off a little bit just because, like, I think even for, like, growing a brand, like, whether it's us, whether, with E and things like that, finding the foundation is important, right? And for Jay, that was music, right? But there's a whole lifestyle that comes with your foundation, right? And you can monetize and capitalize on that lifestyle if you play it right. So when you look at Jay-Z and you see the chart that way, yep, that way. If you see the chart that way, this breaks down his billionaire status, right? And if you really pay attention to each one of those things, it has to really do with something of hip hop, right? So I don't even know how to say the Armand, whatever. That's the Ace of Spades. The one that's 31% right there, that's Ace of Spades. If we remember, when it came to hip hop, when it came to Rockefeller, all you saw, I think it was on the chain, was a bottle of champagne, right? So what does he do? He has a liquor company. Like, that is Ace of Spades. And that's a very expensive bottle, by the way. I don't drink, but I heard that joint is way, I'll look it up once Moose starts talking, right? But that right there, taking a part of the lifestyle of your foundation and owning it, right? Another one is, let's start with not saying that it's small, right? Not saying that it's small, but the art collection, then I'm going to dish it to Moose when he talks about the real estate joint. But the art collection is 70 mil. Not light, it's small, but I'm not saying it's not light. But you got to think about, what does that have to do with hip hop? And that deals with creative freedom. Like, you look at art, that deals with creativity. Music has to deal with creativity, right? So it only makes sense how that he has a huge art collection that is worth 70 mil, because in hip hop, you have to be creative. With art, you are creative. Like he did with him and Beyonce. What was it? He went to the museum with the 19 wonders of the world or something like that, and it had Mona Lisa in it. Like, it had all these different types of art situations. My man is big on art and big on creativity. So it only makes sense, right? He on that clip he mentioned Rockaware, and Rockaware was created in 1999 and sold for $204 million. An idea, something that, okay, I wear clothes. Yo, let's make a brand. And they sold it in, I think, 2007, I believe, for $204 million. Hello, an idea. I wear clothes. We're already, let's call it Rockaware because we have Rockefeller, so why don't I just keep it Rockaware? And sold it, right? What? And now they have planes. I don't even know how much that's worth. But that goes under, I believe, Rock Nation, so that you see the 75 mil, that probably goes under that. Moose talks about the real estate and Oh, hold on. Somebody came with the 250 to 300 per bottle easy for Ace of Spades. Yeah, I'm not drinking that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just drink water. You know, we don't drink anyway. Nah, so I mean the cool thing, and I wrote this down as soon as he said it in the clip. You know, he talks about creativity, of course, things that he enjoys, but he also talks about, have standards and integrity.
Yep.
And I always like to bring up this concept, right, of just character. I think it's super important that regardless of how successful somebody gets, I find that the more success you get, the easier it becomes to cheat. All right. And I'm not even trying to hurt nobody's feelings.
First of all, you're not gonna speed past that like you didn't just say what you just said.
What? Say that one more time.
Yeah, I feel that the more success somebody gets, the easier it becomes to cheat. Just kind of talking to entrepreneurs locally and even friends that I have and around what happened just recently, right, with this whole economic bailout and people filing for the PPA and things like that. And yeah, while legally you can do it through tax code, you can pay yourself as an employee, although you're an owner under the books. But it's like, that's not what the money was supposed to be used for, right? But it becomes easy when you don't have standards and integrity to hold you accountable of what not to do in those cases. So when you look at some of his real estate deals, he's always been about the culture. And like you said, maybe because of his own upbringing, but his deal to bring the Nets to Brooklyn.
Yep.
And put them in his old neighborhood. And now think about, like, we're from New York, going to Barclays and seeing that arena, then a Shake Shack opens up right across the street. What's happening to the value of the neighborhood right off the Brooklyn Bridge? And y'all see the hat, so I can really go in on this topic, right? New high-rise and luxury buildings all within that 2-3 mile radius. So what is he doing? Not just is he benefiting, right, because of his own standards, but his integrity of, let me make sure everything I do, I can pass forward or pass along to somebody else. Now an entire community, multiple generations are going to benefit because some of these moves. So that's the part really that I wanted to cover from just some of his moves and some of his morals, that it's like there's always something tied to it that does bring back, whether you see it now and understand it, because I'm sure some people are going to say, well, what about the whole thing, the collab he did between Roc Nation and the NFL? He was a supporter for Colin, and Colin wasn't a part of that deal. Like, that's kind of shady. But then again, with the way he's moving and his track record, that's not something that you can say that's a bad move until you see it fully, play out.
Yep. I wanted to talk about title a bit, right? For the simple fact, well, granted, title right there, 100 mil, right? 100 mil. But I personally feel, and I think it's gotten a little bit better, but I personally feel that title had a really bad start. Really bad start. And this is kind of like a branding lesson as well. Because if anybody remembers how title started, they had this whole campaign of top artists sounding like they mad because they didn't get paid for their music, right? If anybody can remember that. Now, this is where they went wrong. So for the artists, that's great, but are they selling to artists? So you have to look at Apple, and you have to look at Spotify, and you have to look at other streaming platforms that were there, and they were catering to the customer. They were giving songs, different catalogs by the second to those people who were the consumers, right? So they made it about the consumers, where title made it about the artist. So it was a very rough start, because if you're not going to make it about me, why do I care about you, right? And so even, and I don't have it because they were going to block me because it was a long clip that I saw. But even Jay in the Rap Radar interview, part 1, if y'all want to look it up, right, was saying that was a mess up that he did, right? He owned it, and he felt like he had to do something real quick about it, and it backfired because it just looked like angry artists, right? So when you're looking at, now granted, it only makes sense for Jay-Z to have a streaming platform. Like I said, if you look at any of these different things, and we'll get into the Rock Nation thing because I truly adore that model, right? But it only makes sense for Jay-Z to have Tidal, right? Because if he comes from a music background, you have the next thing that's happening, which is streaming, because we're not buying physical albums anymore, and you're on an ownership kind of vibe that you've been since day one, it only makes sense. So I'm now asking people, like, what is that next venture for you? Already start thinking about that. Like, look at the foundation that you have, but what goes around it. You know, do you own a publishing company? Do you own a clothing line? Do you own whether it's a tech company, something of some sort, right? Make that model up now so you know what you're aiming for, right? Jay knew from the beginning. He was like, yo, I thought I was going to do one album, and like one foot was already out the door. Like, I knew there was something bigger, right? And so now he's a billionaire because he already had the mindset of like, yo, I'm going to take over the whole industry, the whole lifestyle of hip hop culture. I'm going to own culture in my own way, right? So when it comes to your own brand, what is that thing for you? And I would love to see people in the comments with what is that next venture that you would love to get into? Not that you are getting into right now, so don't feel pressured like, oh my God, I got to spend like 100 G's on this. I'm not saying that. But what is that next venture for you? Like, what are you going to own a network show or something like that? Are you going to own your own studio? Even little things like that, what is that? Because how he just took over the hip hop culture and made $1 billion off of doing it is beyond genius. Like, I don't want to look at anything outside of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, it just doesn't make sense because then it won't succeed because the passion isn't there. If the passion is from the foundation and I go somewhere outside of it, it makes no sense. So Moose, when looking at this, like, talk to me about how other people have modeled their, whether it's millions or billions, and how this makes sense and how could this keep rising?
Yeah, it's a very traditional concept that you see a lot of business people have done it, and it's simply called cut out the middleman. Cut out the middleman. Yeah, cutting out the middleman and going straight to the source. And I know sometimes it can be like, what? It's that easy? But it really is. Because Tidal was a streaming company, and I'm not sure if it was the same name, but it was a streaming company before Jay-Z even purchased it, right? It's not like he created that and built it. But it was owned by another tech company. Mm-hmm. So he went and acquired the tech company that owned Tidal and turned a $56 million deal to a $600 million evaluation today.
Yep.
Right? Not to mention that he already got his money back when he allowed Sprint to get in with a 33%, I think it was a 33% acquisition for $200 million. So he's already quadrupled his money and still has, majority ownership through the rest of the way. But what was the real concept there is that he went to the source. He cut out the middleman and went directly to the source instead of being Spotify 2.0. So that's really another way that we can begin to think about as we expand our businesses, what parts of my business have a middleman or make me have to go to a middleman that I can now start to think about it, right? So like for us, the conversation now is within the next couple of years, how can we start our own programming, division so that we can literally create from A through Z our own assessments, right? So that's one of the ways that we're looking to cut out and not have to rely on anyone and have complete ownership. So it's really just that traditional concept of like, all right, what pieces am I acquiring or requiring, counting on somebody else that respectfully I'm going to eliminate them by creating that division and become the supplier.